My name is Dave Trabert. I'm president of Kansas Policy Institute, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all here tonight for our second annual dinner here in Johnson County. I want to start this evening by thanking the great staff here at the Marriott for a wonderful evening so far. And next I want to thank the person who really did all the hard work here, and I'm not sure where she's always hiding in the back, but our development director, Erica Suker, is a terrific planner and executor, and we just do what she tells us to do. Erica, where are you? And you've already met our Vice President and Policy Director, James Franco. James is out here somewhere. You'll hear from him in a few minutes again. Our Fiscal Policy Analyst, Patrick Parks. Patrick is, I'm not sure where you are, Patrick, but... And then the woman who might have one of the hardest jobs in our organization, our administrative assistant, Beth Wasco. She has to try to keep me on schedule. Beth, I see you back there. All right. And I also want to introduce, technically today he's an adjunct fellow because he still has a full-time gig as a teacher in a Topeka elementary school. But David Dorsey is coming to work for us. David, stand up. David is coming to work for us full-time in June when he's done teaching, because he thinks coming to work for Kansas Policy Institute is the best way that he can help kids improve their education opportunities. That really says something. I think that really says something about the challenges that we face that we're going to talk about in a minute. We're delighted to have David come join us. We have access to a lot of the data. We know where to find it. The one piece we were missing was being able to tell the inside story, because there's a lot of things different we've found out what goes on in schools than what you might hear from the media or even from your local school district. David has already told us some amazing things that is really going to help guide us. In fact, one of the things he pointed out helped us get our first school choice program implemented in Kansas. I'll tell you about that in a minute. Now, I want to thank our sponsors, and I'm not going to read these all, but because you've probably seen them, but I do want to mention to thank the Doremus Foundation, one of our personal freedom champions, and the Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice. Now, Friedman has been a partner of ours for a long time. We are really pleased with our association with the Friedman Foundation. That's, for those, yes, that is Milton and Rose Friedman. It's their organization. They've been working with us for a long time on school choice in Kansas, and we are delighted to have such great partners. In fact, there's an event that Friedman is hosting tomorrow evening at one of our guests' homes. I think Kate and David Banks. If you're interested in going to hear another Friedman presentation, come see them. That's tomorrow night at their home, or you can just send us an email at KPI and we can get you the information. I also want to thank our free market benefactors, Colt Energy, Intercontinental, R. Lee and Barbara Harris, and Rob Smith. Thank you all very much. Now, we have a long list of limited government advocates and host couples, and I won't read their names in the interest of time, but please take a note of your program and thank them if you see them for their great sponsorships. We have a number of elected officials tonight, and our tradition is there's so many, we don't make them do it one at a time, but we have 16 state representatives and state senators here tonight. So all at once, if you'd stand up and get a great round of applause. We're also pleased to have one of our founders with us tonight, and our board chair, George Pearson. George is here with a number of our trustees and members of our advisory council, so if you would all stand up all at once, please, too. Thank you very much. Where are you, George? There he is. Kansas Policy Institute was founded in 1996 by George Pearson and a few of his good friends. And we've been in Wichita since then. In 2012, we added an office here in Overland Park. In addition to the staff that you met tonight, we also have a group of nationally recognized scholars on tax and fiscal policy, Medicaid, pension reform, and healthcare issues. 2014 is already, in this early year, it's already been a remarkable success for our staff and our supporters. And I want to emphasize that it's our supporters. The staff gets out in front and we do some of the heavy lifting, but we couldn't do this without the dedicated support of hundreds of Kansans who share our belief in limited government, free markets, and individual liberty. It's a very large and growing team effort. One of the things we got done this year was concluded a 5-year fight to bring property tax reform to Kansas. Now, we all know how local governments like to pretend that they're holding the line on property tax. Well, starting next year in July, they can't do that anymore because now they're going to have to vote on whether or not they want to increase your property taxes if it's going to be more than inflation. So the total property tax, not the individual property, but thank you. Here's what they do. And Johnson County is a perfect example. We look back over the last 16 years and found that the mill rate here in Johnson County has gone up 16%. 1 point a year. So local government says, we're holding the line on your property taxes. See, the mill rate hasn't gone up. Here's what they did. They increased your property tax dollars by 132%, while inflation was up 42%. Overland Park, now that was just the county. Now here's the cities on top of it. Overland Park, 162%. Olathe, 153%. Leawood, 147%. The cities and the counties and all the local government entities vigorously opposed this basic transparency, tell the truth, how much are you raising my property taxes? They fought it because they don't want us to know. It's one of the biggest battles we fight in government. They don't want us to know the facts. Stand up, tell us the truth, let us all make fully informed decisions. But this very simple transparency issue is an example of how much information you're not supposed to have. Now, we're also hoping by the end of this week, keep our fingers crossed, there could also be a major reform to the appeals process for property tax in Kansas, trying to convert the Court of Tax Appeals to a Board of Tax Appeals. We're involved in that in kind of a supporting role, but there's some, if you're interested in more information, there's some legislators here who can fill your ears with some of the horror stories that have gone on there. Now, we do a lot of work on taxes, but probably what we're best known for is our work on education. And we've had a lot of major success in education issues this year. As I mentioned earlier, we got the first school choice program in Kansas passed into law this year. Finally, after, thank you. School choice has been sweeping the nation for years, and we finally got the first one here in Kansas. Alternative licensing, so that teachers, you don't have to have an education degree any longer to be a teacher. So that if you're a professional, for example, you can be a PhD in chemistry in Kansas, and you can walk right in and teach at the university level, but not at the high school level, because you don't have the right kind of a degree according to state law. Well, now the new law going into effect July 1 will allow professionals in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and vocational fields to become teachers without having to get that education degree if the local school board agrees that they have the capability of being a good teacher. They just have to get the authorization from the school board, and the state has to give them a license. That's going to give a lot of school districts, especially in some of our rural areas, access to a lot more effective teachers. Tenure reform. You've probably heard a lot of controversy about tenure reform. Districts are no longer required to provide mandatory due process, so that they are going to be able to much more easily eliminate ineffective teachers. The goal is to keep effective teachers in the classroom, not just teachers who've been there the longest. And we have a lot of good teachers in Kansas, but we have to make sure that the students are getting the best deal here in getting the effective teachers. Now, the last one, it was a study commission, and we're going to be looking, we do a lot on spending and revenues in schools. A study commission is finally going to start looking this year at how much schools actually spend, What are the opportunities to spend that money more efficiently? And what are we spending money on that really doesn't have much to do with improving student outcomes? That was pretty controversial getting that through because, again, a lot of folks inside government really don't want you to know what's going on. But perhaps our greatest achievement on education, according to a number of the legislators, some of whom are here tonight, is that our work over the years actually helped shape the Supreme Court decision on school funding that was just issued in March. All the years of court decisions being based on how much money are you spending are behind us now. And the court adopted kind of a novel approach. Let's look at student outcomes first. Money matters, but let's look at what the students are actually achieving. That's our primary goal. And when you look at money, all the funding counts. That was another issue that we've been pushing for a long time. Don't just look at one piece that actually is only about a third of school spending. You hear about base state aid and it's $4,000. Well, total school spending is almost $13,000 per pupil. And it keeps setting record funding levels. So we need to start looking at how we're doing, and if we want to get more money into the classroom, there's lots of ways to do it, and that's what this study commission is going to do. And one of the reasons that's so critical, I mean, again, this is just boggles the mind, I think. To this day, with all the fights we've had about are schools underfunded, what are they getting? To this day, no one in Kansas, not a single legislator or judge or policy analyst, knows what it costs to provide education so the kids can reach the outcomes they need and make efficient use of your money. No one. Because no study of that nature has ever been done in Kansas. And you know who pointed that out? A KPI scholar. Found out that the old study that they were working on was deliberately skewed to provide the court with higher numbers. Now the court didn't come right out and admit that in their opinion, but what they said was, well, we made a decision then based on the way the facts were presented to us. Now the facts have been presented to us in a little bit different way. So we're going this direction. We're going to take that as a huge victory, not for us, for the kids of Kansas. Thank you. Now, all these student-focused tenure reform and getting different teachers into the classroom and figuring out how much more we can make available to the classroom, you would think that this would be a great event for Kansas. We think so. We think the bill that Governor Brownback signed last week is a great turning point in education for Kansas. But that's not how the media sees it. That's not how the education establishment sees it. They're saying things like, well, you're anti-education. You're ideologues. We hear that a lot. And a few things that I really can't repeat in public. You know, their reaction was just not predictable. We knew what was coming. But I think this embodies one of the greatest problems we have in public education these days. Everything you see, and if you go back, when you go home tonight or tomorrow, look back at some of the media coverage. See if you can you'll find a lot of things about it's going to do this to the schools or this to the adults in the system. You'll find nothing in there about students. The focus is all on the institutions and the adults in the system. Our focus is on trying to raise education attainment and provide more educational opportunities for kids. Now, here's what you're not supposed to know. Because the reason that those tax credit scholarships were so important is that Kansas really doesn't have some of the highest achievement levels in the country. That's what you've heard from media. That's what you've heard from your school districts. Truth is, we're about average. We only seem to be high because of the way there are very large achievement gaps between low-income kids and those who are not, and very large achievement gaps between white students and minorities. And in Kansas, we happen to be pretty white. That's really what it comes down to. So the averages look good, and that's what you are fed all the time. And if you're a legislator, well, why would I want to change the system if we have sky-high achievement? Truth is, we're about average. And it's even worse for the low-income kids. There's 2 to 3 years worth of learning gap in the 4th grade for low-income kids. And by the way, that's about half the kids in Kansas, because by low income they mean if you're eligible for free and reduced lunch. It's not really income-based. About half the kids are several years worth of learning behind in Kansas. And that's what you're not supposed to know. And that's why the reaction has been so negative and vitriolic. the truth about student achievement and school spending and everything, there's a book on your place, the 2014 Public Education Fact Book. That thing is loaded with information, and that's one of the most hated publications in the education establishment. I had a superintendent last week send me a note saying, please stop sending these out to us, we just throw them in the trash. We don't want to know. You're wrong. I said, where are we wrong? Well, this number is wrong. I said, well, but that's from your financial statement. That's from your, I mean, here it is, I'll send you the link. Well, it can't be right. That's what this is all about. They are so infuriated that we cannot be bullied into silence. And they're so angry, I think, that they're starting to make some really interesting mistakes. There was a story in the Kansas City Star about a week ago that really opened, I think, a lot of eyes. There were some very chilling comments in there from a legislator in Johnson County and from a school official in Kansas City. They said, this education bill has nothing to do with the greater good of our public school system. It takes money away from advancing the public good and transfers it to individuals to advance their own private interests. Well, those individuals are the parents of poor children who are in some of the lowest performing schools in Kansas. But see, that's not for the greater good. What it really comes down to is, and this is what we're trying to prevent, we're becoming more and more a nation of collectivists. That's not going to happen on our watch. That is not going to happen on the watch of our supporters.